You're watching this for a divine reason. Not because you were bored. Not because the algorithm guessed right. And certainly not because of luck or coincidence. This moment was arranged. This message was timed. And your heart was guided here because heaven is trying to speak to you in a language deeper than logic. There are seasons when God doesn't shout. He doesn't force clarity. He doesn't rush outcomes. Instead, He whispers. He stirs. He invites you to trust what you cannot yet explain. And if you're here right now, it's because you are standing in one of those seasons, where faith is being tested not by pain alone, but by silence. You've been wondering if holding on still makes sense. You've questioned whether staying is wisdom or just fear of letting go. You've replayed conversations in your mind, read between the lines of silence, and searched for signs that what you feel is real. And in the middle of all that uncertainty, something in you refused to fully give up. That hesitation to walk away is not weakness. It's discernment. This isn't just about emotion. This isn't about attachment. This is about a connection that didn't form randomly. Some connections are engineered by God not to comfort you, but to transform you. They awaken parts of your soul you didn't know were asleep. They expose wounds you thought were healed. They force you to confront patience, surrender, and trust at levels you've never had to before. Right now, it may feel like nothing is happening. Like the prayers are unanswered. Like the distance is growing instead of shrinking. Like the silence is louder than any words ever were. But heaven does not measure progress the way humans do. God works beneath the surface long before He reveals anything outwardly. Seeds don't grow in the open. They grow underground, in darkness, under pressure, surrounded by dirt. And for a while, it looks like nothing is happening. But that doesn't mean the seed is dead. It means it's becoming. What feels still is not stagnant. What feels delayed is not denied. And what feels uncertain is often where God is doing His most precise work. You may not see it, but transformation is already in motion. Hearts are being softened. Perspectives are being reshaped. Lessons are being learned in places you cannot reach. God is working on both sides of this connection, even if only one side is aware of it right now. And yes, there is a reason it hurts. Divine connections are rarely easy. If they were, they wouldn't stretch you. They wouldn't refine you. They wouldn't teach you how to love without control and trust without guarantees. This season is not about proving your endurance, it's about building your character. It's about learning how to stand in faith even when reassurance is absent. Sometimes God allows distance not to break a connection, but to purify it. To remove dependency, to strip away illusion, to ensure that when the connection stands again, it's rooted in purpose, not fear. You're being asked to trust the process, not the timeline. Heaven's timing rarely matches human urgency. God sees what you can't, the conversations you don't hear, the inner battles you don't witness, the prayers whispered in moments you'll never know about. Just because someone is silent doesn't mean God is inactive in their life. And just because you don't have answers yet doesn't mean you're wrong for staying. This is where many people walk away too soon. Right before the breakthrough. Right before clarity arrives. Right before the miracle begins to unfold. Not because God failed, but because waiting required more faith than they were willing to give. You are not weak for wanting to stay. You are not foolish for believing there's more. But you are being invited to check your heart. Are you holding on out of fear, or out of faith? Are you trusting God with the outcome, or trying to control it? There is a difference between surrender and stagnation. Surrender says, I will stay open, but I will not force. It says, I trust God more than I trust my expectations. It says, even if the outcome surprises me, I believe God is good. This is not about chasing someone. This is not about waiting at the expense of your worth. This is about listening to what God is asking of you in this season. Sometimes He asks you to hold on. Sometimes He asks you to let go. But when He asks you to stay, He also gives you the grace to endure. And that grace is why you're still here. There is a purpose being woven right now that you cannot yet see. A testimony forming out of what once felt like confusion. A future moment where you'll look back and realize the silence was shaping something sacred. What you thought was lost is not lost. It's being refined. What you thought was broken is being rebuilt. What you thought was over is being repositioned. God is not the author of chaos. He is the master of alignment. And sometimes alignment requires separation before reunion. Stillness before movement. Silence before revelation. You're learning to listen with your spirit, not just your emotions. And here's the part you need to hear most clearly: staying does not mean suffering endlessly. It means staying anchored in God, not in outcomes. It means choosing peace even while answers are pending. It means continuing to grow, heal, and live fully, without putting your life on pause. If this connection is truly divinely guided, it will not require you to shrink. It will not drain your identity. It will not cost you your relationship with God. Divine connections always lead you closer to Him, not further away. That's how you know this is different. Heaven is calling your heart not to give up prematurely, but also not to idolize the connection. Trust the one who formed it. Trust the process He designed. Trust that what's meant for you will meet you at the right time, in the right way, without force. You are not forgotten in this waiting. You are not unseen in this silence. And you are not wrong for believing something greater is unfolding. Stay grounded, stay faithful, stay open, because miracles rarely announce themselves ahead of time. They arrive quietly, after patience has done its work, and faith has proven its depth. The question is not whether God is working. He is. The real question is whether you will remain steady long enough to witness what He's preparing to reveal. Don't give up now, not when heaven is still moving, not when purpose is still unfolding, not when your story is still being written. There will be moments when doubt creeps in quietly, disguised as logic. It will sound reasonable. It will tell you that you've waited long enough, that nothing has changed, that you should protect yourself by walking away. But not every voice that sounds practical is wise, and not every urge to leave is guidance. Some tests are designed to see whether you will abandon what God asked you to steward simply because it stopped feeling reassuring. Faith is rarely loud. Most of the time, it's a calm persistence that remains when excitement fades. It's the choice to trust even when emotions fluctuate. And right now, you are being invited into a deeper level of faith, one that does not depend on constant signs, messages, or visible progress. You may feel like you're carrying more of the weight, like you're the one praying harder, believing longer, hoping deeper. That imbalance can feel unfair, even exhausting. But remember this: God never measures effort the way humans do. What feels one-sided to you may be preparation for a strength you will need later. What feels heavy now may become the very thing that steadies you in the future. Some of the strongest souls are formed in seasons where reassurance is scarce. This season is teaching you discernment. It's teaching you how to hear God's voice beneath the noise of fear. It's teaching you how to love without losing yourself, how to wait without becoming bitter, how to hope without demanding control. And yes, there will be days when you feel tired of being strong. On those days, remember that strength does not mean pretending you're okay. It means bringing your uncertainty to God instead of letting it harden your heart. It means admitting when you're weary and asking for grace instead of answers. God is not disappointed by your questions. He is patient with your process. You don't need to have everything figured out to remain faithful. You only need to stay honest. What's unfolding right now is not just about a connection between two people. It's about alignment. It's about timing. It's about shaping both of you into individuals who can handle what comes next without destroying it. Sometimes God delays the union to prevent future damage. If things came together too quickly, unresolved wounds would surface later. Unhealed patterns would repeat. Old fears would sabotage new beginnings. So God pauses what you want in order to prepare what you need. That preparation often feels like waiting alone. But you are not alone. Even when you don't feel God's presence the way you used to, He is closer than ever. Silence does not mean absence. Often, it means God is working in ways that don't require your interference. You are learning the difference between forcing and trusting. Forcing creates anxiety. Trust creates peace, even when outcomes are unknown. If you're meant to walk away, God will bring clarity that brings peace, not confusion. If you're meant to stay, He will give you quiet strength, not desperation. Pay attention to the fruit. God's guidance never contradicts the peace of your spirit. And if staying still feels right deep down, even when it's hard, that matters. You are not imagining this pull. You are not foolish for sensing depth where others might see nothing. Spiritual connections operate on a level that cannot be explained or justified easily. They don't always make sense to the outside world, but they make sense to the soul. That doesn't mean every spiritual connection is meant to last forever in the same form. Some are meant to teach, some to heal, some to awaken. But the ones that are divinely protected will not disappear simply because circumstances are challenging. They may bend, they may stretch, they may go quiet, but they will not break. Right now, you're standing at a crossroads that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. There's no clear sign saying, go, or, stop. There's just an invitation to trust God with the unknown. And that's where transformation happens. You're learning patience not as passive waiting, but as active trust. You're learning how to release outcomes while still honoring what your heart recognizes as sacred. You're learning that love guided by God does not cling, it believes. There will come a time when this season makes sense. When the silence explains itself. When the waiting reveals its purpose. When you realize that what felt like delay was actually protection. Until then, your task is simple, but not easy. Stay anchored in truth. Do not let fear write the story for you. Do not let impatience convince you that God has forgotten you. Do not let temporary emotions override eternal guidance. You are allowed to live fully while you wait. You are allowed to grow, to laugh, to rest, to pursue your purpose. Waiting does not mean stagnating. It means continuing forward without closing your heart. If this connection is meant to return to you, it will meet you as a whole person, not a diminished one. And if God decides to transform it into something different than you expected, you will be strong enough to receive that too. That's the beauty of trusting Him. You don't lose either way. You gain wisdom, you gain depth, you gain peace. Miracles don't always look like sudden reunions or dramatic confessions. Sometimes they look like inner healing. Sometimes they look like clarity replacing confusion. Sometimes they look like you becoming someone who no longer needs answers to remain faithful. And that, in itself, is a miracle. So when the night feels long and the questions return, breathe. Remind yourself that God's plans are not fragile. They don't fall apart because of silence. They don't collapse because of distance. They are sustained by His will, not by your anxiety. You were never meant to carry this alone. Lay it down when it feels heavy. Pick it up again when peace returns. Trust the rhythm God is teaching you. Because what is meant for you will not require you to abandon yourself to receive it. And what God is building right now is far greater than what you're afraid of losing. Stay a little longer, not out of fear, not out of attachment, but out of trust, because heaven is still at work. And your story is not finished yet. There will be a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when you realize you are no longer panicking the way you once did. The questions may still exist, but they no longer control you. The waiting may continue, but it no longer defines your worth. That shift is not accidental. It is evidence that something inside you has matured. God has been strengthening you from the inside out, teaching you how to remain steady even when circumstances refuse to move. This is the part of the journey few people talk about, the middle. Not the beginning where everything feels electric and full of promise, and not the ending where answers finally arrive. The middle is where faith is purified. It's where you learn the difference between needing reassurance and trusting God's character. It's where you stop asking, will this work out? And begin asking, who am I becoming while I wait? Because the truth is, God cares deeply about who you are becoming. If this season has stripped away your illusions, it's not to punish you. It's to free you. Illusions cannot survive where truth is needed. And what God is preparing for you requires clarity, not fantasy. It requires emotional strength, spiritual grounding, and a heart that knows how to love without losing itself. You may have noticed that you are more reflective now, more careful with your words, more aware of your reactions. That's not coincidence. Waiting slows you down so you can see yourself clearly. It reveals patterns you didn't know were there. It shows you where fear still tries to lead and where faith must take over. And that awareness is a gift. Not everything that hurts is harmful. Some pain is instructional. Some discomfort is the friction that produces growth. God often uses uncertainty to detach us from control. Because once control is gone, trust finally has room to breathe. You are learning how to trust God without demanding guarantees. That lesson alone will serve you for the rest of your life. There will be days when the silence feels personal, as if you're being ignored or overlooked. But God's silence is never dismissive. It is intentional. Sometimes He is quiet because He wants you to hear what you've been drowning out with noise, your intuition, your discernment, your inner knowing that does not rely on external validation. That inner knowing is being sharpened now. And as it sharpens, you'll begin to notice something else. Your reactions are changing. What once triggered anxiety now invites reflection. What once made you desperate now calls you to prayer. That is spiritual maturity taking root. This connection, whatever form it ultimately takes, has already changed you. And that change is not temporary. You are becoming more grounded, more discerning, more aligned with God's presence in your life. Even if the outcome surprises you, the transformation will remain. And that is never wasted. Sometimes God allows us to stand in uncertainty so we can learn how to live without clinging. Clinging creates fear. Trust creates freedom. You are learning to release expectations without releasing hope. That balance is rare, and it is powerful. You are no longer asking God to prove himself. You are learning to rest in who he already is. That shift marks the difference between spiritual infancy and spiritual depth. There may come a time when communication resumes, when clarity returns, when movement replaces stillness. If that happens, you'll meet it with wisdom you didn't have before. You won't rush. You won't idealize. You won't lose yourself in the process. You'll recognize the value of pacing, boundaries, and discernment. And if that time does not come in the way you imagined, you will still be okay. Because God has been preparing you not just for a reunion, but for resilience. This season is teaching you that your peace cannot be borrowed from another person's presence. It must be cultivated within. And once peace is internal, it cannot be taken away by distance, silence, or uncertainty. You are learning how to remain whole, regardless of outcomes. That wholeness is sacred. Many people never reach this place because they give up too soon, not on the connection, but on the inner work. They distract themselves, replace depth with noise, or harden their hearts to avoid vulnerability. You chose a harder path. You chose awareness over avoidance, faith over fear, and that choice matters. God sees it, every prayer whispered when no one was listening, every tear held back when you chose grace instead of resentment, every moment you resisted the urge to force something that wasn't ready. None of it is invisible. Heaven keeps record of faithfulness that never makes headlines. You may not be rewarded immediately, but you are being refined permanently. And refinement always precedes revelation. At some point, you will look back on this season and realize it was a turning point, not because of what happened externally, but because of who you became internally. You learned patience without passivity, love without possession, faith without certainty. Those qualities will shape every relationship you touch moving forward. This is how God builds people who can handle blessings without being destroyed by them. You are becoming someone who can receive without clinging, love without fear, and wait without losing hope. That is not accidental. That is preparation, and preparation often feels like delay. But delay is not denial. It is alignment. Trust that what God is doing now will make sense later. Trust that the silence has purpose. Trust that the stillness is not empty, it is full of unseen movement. You are not standing still. You are being positioned. So continue to pray, but also continue to live. Continue to hope, but also continue to grow. Continue to believe, but also continue to release control. Let God surprise you, because what he has planned will not require you to abandon your peace to receive it. And when the next chapter begins, however it unfolds, you will step into it not as someone who waited anxiously, but as someone who waited faithfully. That difference will change everything. Stay present, stay open, stay rooted, because heaven has not stopped working. And you are exactly where you need to be right now.